Welcome, everybody, to our leadership lunch chat with Jen Wilson and myself. And today's topic is going to be about generosity, which is something we often don't talk about widely, but is really important as a leader of when we step back and think about where are we being generous with our time, with ourselves. So how we actually demonstrate this as a leader is really important, especially during these times when people are so stressed out. So I will turn it over to you, Jen, to get started on this, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Generosity is one of my favorite subjects. Amy and I were talking about what we wanted to discuss today, and we were discussing it. And it's funny because that's how she and I first connected, was to start collaborating on a presentation or some sort of content around generosity, the generous leader, we call it. And we're going to be doing a presentation on it at AICPA Engage the end of July, and have our first in-person meeting, she and I, in I don't know how long it's been. I've seen you three-dimensionally, but years.
Yeah.
So anyway, generosity is like a compelling attribute. And most of us want to be around people that are generous. And the reason that we want to be around them isn't because we want them to shower us with stuff. It's because we feel like we don't have to distrust their motives. And I think that the first thing I need to say about generosity is that it is modeled, it is learned, it is conscious, but it's also a little bit genetic. And I think everybody is born with, you get a thimbleful of generosity or you get a gallon of it or something. There's a spectrum of natural generosity, and then the rest of it has to be intentional. And the opposite of generous is selfish. We are all selfish human beings. That's the nature of human beingness. We're selfish. We want air, we want water, we need food. We have to protect things to stay alive. So there's a natural selfishness, and then there's also sort of a professional selfishness. We want more money, not less. We want more time and more control of our time and not less time. We don't want people impinging on our time. We want to look good and be held in high esteem. We don't want to look bad. And we want to feel good. We want to feel in control. Some of us, that control is the feel good. Some people want harmony. And we don't want the other feelings. And so we sort of selfishly protect those things professionally. And most people want to work for somebody that they can count on to not just protect their own professional selfish interests, but also look out for theirs too. Mm-hmm. And so I think that most of us don't think, is this a selfish behavior? Am I having a selfish thought? Am I being generous enough? It's sort of a subconscious thing that we're doing autopilot, and I think it needs to be way more conscious.
Right, and to your point of you might have a thimbleful or too much, either side of the spectrum might not be the right amount. Right. It's coming somewhere in the middle, because someone that can be too generous gets walked on many times as a leader and maybe not respected the way that they should be. So there are boundaries and lines to how you go about demonstrating it. But it's important to kind of think about what those attributes are and step back to see if you're doing it or not. And one of them is just taking responsibility when things aren't going well. And in this time that we've been in, there's so many things that have been outside a leader's control, of stress and anxiety that's been put on staff people or people that work for them. And that's when we have to step back and say, what can I control and what can't I control? And if I can't control the outside circumstances that are creating the stressful situation, what I do need to be is transparent to the people that work for me and say, this sucks. Like, I feel it with you. Like, this isn't something we can control right now. But these are the things that we can control, is how we put barriers or boundaries around the work, how we won't judge you if you need a mental health day, and no one asks what's going on. And taking responsibility for the things that you seek out that are important. And it's also a matter of asking people too what you can't see that's a problem. Because a lot of times as a leader, you know, just, you know, as you grow as a leader, less and less truth comes to you because people are either afraid to tell you or they have their own agendas of what they want you to know or don't want you to know. So it's up to you to skip levels and to get into the organization and learn what you might not be being told that is going on. And that rolling up your sleeves piece has a generous capability that a lot of people aren't willing to do, that they don't want to have to go in the trenches to do that. But in order for you to make any kind of change and real change that matters, it's important that you're getting the real feedback that you need to hear.
For sure. And you know, so like selfishly, I just want to get through my day. Selfishly, I have a big agenda this week. I have a bunch of deliverables. Selfishly, I don't want to uncover problems. I want problems to sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how most leaders are. We just hurtling through our week, just racing, you know, through what we need to do. And we're not stopping and saying, hey, I really need to check in with, you know, these 3 people this week. And an element of generosity is putting what's comfortable aside or what is critically, you know, on our backs aside and making time, carving out time for your people, and then asking questions. Curiosity is generous.
Mm-hmm.
And then listening, which is super generous. Because listening is like, I'm going to let you get it all out without answering or jumping in or trying to solve or anything else. I'm going to really try to assess where you are by letting you say what's so. And a lot of us as leaders don't stop. We think, well, I'll talk to my people at evaluation time. That's right. Coming up, you know. So I'll hear the problems. Well, that's not usually when you hear the problems. Because at evaluation time, they're expecting you to tell them what you think. They're not really expecting a lot of sharing on their part. I mean, they hope for some, but they might have a raise tied to it or a bonus or something. There might be money talk. And that's not usually where people put their palms up and say, here's what's so for me, right there in the center of like, am I getting promoted or not? So don't wait for these you know, vignettes that come up once or twice a year that are the normal mentor meeting or the performance appraisal meeting or something and think that's going to get you the real check-in that you need with these people, the real truth that they're experiencing. And as leaders, it is a generous act to show interest and to get out there in the trenches and to hear from your people. And we've said these questions a million times. I feel like on Leadership Lunch Chat, I don't know how many, really not a million because we haven't done a million of these, but a bunch. And it's, you know, how are you really? You know, how are you really? And then just be quiet, see what comes out. And even if they say one sentence, just be quiet to see it because there's a paragraph behind that. Just let it, you know, come out. And then, you know, what's really working so they could get present to kind of good. And then what's not working and how come? And then how can I help you? Mm-hmm. Another question that we've been asking a lot lately is if you could change one thing about your current circumstances, what would it be? And that is a wonderful way for people to sort of cough up their truth about how are you really? Because it forces one thing I would change.
Right.
And that, you know, if there's a real problem with them or they're having a real struggle, even if it's personal, that often elicits it. So those are generous things that we should be doing more of.
And I would say a generous thing that maybe a lot of people won't agree with me about is to do away with the annual evaluation or midterm. It is a waste of time in my point of view. It creates, first of all, the evaluation ends up getting pushed back on the staff person to write their own evaluation half the time and then not really get someone's independent feedback that they're looking for, to not have to have extra work to have my evaluation. To have an evaluation, you really only remember the last 3 or 4 weeks of what someone did. It's very hard to go back for a year. And if you've been actually waiting for a year to give feedback, you're not being generous. So that is almost to trip someone up. And so if we're a true generous leader, like you said, what's hard is we're busy. Everyone's busy, right? And taking that time for feedback is hard. But that's when you have to step back and assess, am I spending time on the right things as a leader? So is it too important for me to still be the subject matter expert, to still be the doer, versus the leader is about helping someone else achieve in their career? And what weight of time in your leadership week are you spending growing and developing other people versus your own skills, client relationships, that sort of thing? How many of those client relationships should be going to someone else because you need to be doing other things as a leader, but you're too afraid to let go of it? And so an evaluation, a true relationship as a leader is showing you personally care real time. So whether you set that up once a month for a check-in, or you remind yourself once a week to kind of step back and give feedback to people of what they did well and what are the things that you think that they could improve upon and where they can get the skill for that, not just laying it on them, but saying, you know what, I looked up this training, this could be a really good training for you, or this client opportunity that we have coming in the door could be a great opportunity for you to expand this skill, or maybe this person would be a great person to shadow because they're really good at this, and maybe that would give you a better example of what this looks like. Whatever you need to do to think about what would help someone as well, not just lay on the line that there's something they need to fix, because when someone walks away with that, then they feel like they don't know what to do about it and then feel bad about themselves, versus you showing from a generous perspective that you personally care about their career, about them personally, about their growth, and you're taking the time to get them there.
And to think about them.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you just talked about was like, I have to think about you, not just spend time with you. I have to think about you when I'm away from you and think about what I could do to provide you more opportunities. It's not just that, like the annual performance appraisal. Okay, now I'm going to think about your career while I'm filling it out. And that one meeting we have, I should be thinking about you and wondering about you and generating for you if I'm responsible for your success and development, often. Generous acts include delegation. Delegation is a generous act. Some of us think that that's not cool because it gives people more work, but delegating things that are challenging to people and being willing to let them struggle some and to have to get in there and coach yourself instead of doing it, which would be faster and easier for you. But letting them have those opportunities instead of you just continuing to do them, that's a generous act. It's a generous act also to give away opportunities for visibility, or if you are a big sourcer of business, giving away the business for someone else to serve. So you source it, but you bring them in to sell, and you let them take that business into their client book under management or whatever, and you give it away. You just start recognizing, hey, I don't need to serve all of this. I don't need to hoard it. I could transition clients. I have tons of clients. I need to move them. Others could serve them. That would open me up for new opportunities, more mentoring, more client development myself. So those are all examples of generous acts, and they do free up time. If we're sitting here thinking, okay, Amy and Jen, I know I need to think about my people more and spend more time with them, creating development plans and hearing what's up with them, but where am I going to find it? Well, start giving stuff away. Get rid of it. Give it to people inside your firm. They want it. They would like to do those opportunities, and you'll develop others and more leverage doing that anyway. It ends up generously coming back to serve your selfish interest when you do it. But I just see too many leaders holding on to work way below their level, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, or thinking that no one could do it as well. And so I think there is a trust factor in being generous, that you realize people have the best intention, even if it's not the way you would have done it, or maybe they don't get to the outcome that you thought. But I think what's important is to understand how someone thinks, that there's not only one way to think about something. So too often, like in your example, you might give away the work, and then not letting them struggle is harming them from learning. And so what will happen a lot is the quick fix is to just ping you and say, what's the answer? What would you do? Instead of you pushing back and saying, well, why don't you try to figure out how you would get to this answer, and then come back to me with your pathway there, and then I'll let you know what you could do or not do in this path. Because you want them to have that moment, and that you trust them to figure out the answer. But there's no harm in coming up with the wrong answer. That the wrong answer is part of learning. And so the only way someone's going to trust that you personally care is that they are not being punished for learning. If you notice that someone has a good work ethic, that they are trying really hard, that they're working really hard, then it's up to you as a leader to step back and think about what are the things that you can do to help them improve their service delivery level, or get to whatever level that they're trying to strive to, but not to shame them. And, I think often I see that branding happen, and that branding can follow someone for years in a firm, that every year someone's still bringing back something that they did as an assistant accountant. And so, it's like, let that go and realize that you weren't perfect either. And so, this is all about removing yourself from the selfish interest of perfection so that you don't have to worry about it. But it doesn't mean that there's only one way to get to an answer, that there's only one way to do things. And there might not be new ways of doing things as well. So the other opportunity of being unselfish is stepping back and going, what skill sets do I not have?
Yes.
And acknowledging that you don't have that, and being like, I think it's great that you understand social media in a way that I don't. So figure this out for us. Figure out a way that we could communicate with clients that we've never communicated with before.
I love that. And, in The Speed of Trust, the one thing that changes everything, business book on trust, which sometimes feels like to people a soft subject. Covey talks about, trust first as one of the 13 behaviors of trust. And the idea that, I have to trust my people first, and then they'll trust me, and I have to trust in them first. There's also a saying, and I don't know who said it, that, that the best thing that a coach can do is to believe in someone before they believe in themselves,
Mm-hmm.
to really know that they can do it or believe they can do it. And if you have that as a coach or leader, and you invest that and make it known to those people, then they can rise into the possibility and believe in themselves too.
Right.
So I think that part of generosity is that trust that you're talking about. I trust you to go figure it out. I trust you to try it. I trust you to do it in a way that's going to be uniquely yours. Don't try to emulate me or be me. Don't be mini me. Be fully you, So I just think that that's selfish ways of being, or trying to create exact cookie cutters, or trying to keep things perfect. If we keep things perfect, there's no innovation. Whatever perfect is, it's probably the way it used to be, not the way it needs to be. You know what I mean? So that's one of the fallacies of perfect, is like you're doing it perfect, but that's perfect the old way. And the way innovation happens is people don't do it the way that somebody else does it. They try a different way. So we don't want to squash innovation in our organization. And generosity, a generous spirit, a generous environment is actually the place where innovation happens.
Yes.
So, and Amy and I could do like 4 hours on generosity, I think. I mean, we have been talking about it together and studying it and spending time on it. I'm so glad we finally did a leadership lunch chat on it. And I know that there's more here. And we encourage you to write to us on our social media accounts and share your ideas related to selfishness and generosity and the benefits. Help us build our Engage presentation further. So we would really appreciate it. And anything else you want to talk about in Leadership Lunch Chat.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jen, as usual, going over our thoughts for the week. And again, like Jen said, if you have anything you'd like us to talk about in the future, please feel free to comment in. Thanks again. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye, everybody.